You're this perp back with another video, and I just got done wrapping up season 1 of Dead Boy Detectives. And my first introduction to these characters, Edwin and Charles, was back when they were first introduced in Doom Patrol. Completely different actors, but I was just intrigued by the backstory that Edwin and Charles are these ghosts that pretty much go around solving mysteries. Thinking of it as like Sherlock Holmes. There's a lot of references to Scooby-Doo in this, and it's very much like that. It's like a teen drama, but it has a lot of gore. It's very graphic. It's not like super teeny bopper-ish. It's meant to fit in with the Sandman universe, and if you haven't seen Sandman, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. That is one of the most underrated shows. So I'm glad that they are expanding the universe, and they do a great job, I feel like, in this, really getting more into that supernatural side and diving more into like hell, which we don't see a lot of in Sandman. We get to see like Dream and all these different realms, and but I really like how right off the bat, another thing that's interesting about these characters is that they're always avoiding death. So whenever they solve a case or close a case, you know, they make sure death comes and they just get out the fucking way. And I like that aspect of it. And they also have other things that are in their way, a bunch of obstacles, because what they're doing isn't really in their world, or their realm isn't really legal. So there's definitely people like the Lost and Found department I'll talk about very shortly, because I think that's really interesting, because the Lost and Found department are pretty much people that make sure children that pass away, they're in their right place and whatnot, making sure they're not where they're not supposed to be, making sure they get their correct afterlife and stuff. It's very complex, and it's very dope how everything is like really displayed, and just like I said, expands on what Sandman kind of set up and whatnot. But they are not alone, as they have other characters that pretty much join them in their mysteries and solving these different cases. As the first other character that we get introduced to is Crystal. And Crystal is pretty much like a clairvoyant. She can read minds, go into people's minds and stuff like that. She becomes very OP in this series. But I really like her introduction, because when we're introduced to her, she is possessed by this demon named Dave. And once they are able to exorcise her and separate the demon from her, Dave is constantly trying to get into her head once again. And her whole thing is she wants to get her memories back, because Dave stole her memories. But it gets a little bit more deeper than just that. Then the next character is probably, I think, will be the fan favorite, is Nico. She is like lives next door to Crystal, because Crystal moves into this like butcher shop. She lives above this butcher shop. Jenny is also another character that's the landlord. I'll talk about her in a minute. But Nico is an interesting character, and she also had to deal with a possession, but a very different possession, because it's not demons. She had these things called dandelion sprites, and I guess they're kind of like evil fairies that kind of possess the person, but it ended up being two of them, and those motherfuckers are hilarious. And once Nika kind of goes through like a near-death experience, she's able to see the dead boys as well, which is an interesting thing that they kind of explain in this. Is if you have like a near-death experience or anything like that, or had any supernatural, encounters, you are able to see ghosts and whatnot. And even her hair changed, but she has hands down the illest fits every like episode or so. Like, she is a really dope character, and I could obviously see her being the fan favorite. So it's really interesting how all these storylines kind of get introduced and how they connect. You know, we have a lot of interesting antagonists as well going on in this story, as the first one we get introduced to, which ends up being the big villain for this first season, is Esther. She's a witch, and on a case, they were trying to look for this missing girl, and this missing girl ended up being taken by Esther. And Esther is a very dope villain. She is evil through and through. She never fucking folds or anything. And her whole deal is she pretty much feeds off of children. You know what I'm saying? She just goes around snatching children, feeding it to her snake, which is so dark. And she also has this connection with Lilith because she was pretty much like on her deathbed, and she wanted Lilith to give her immortality and whatnot, and she just craves power. That's pretty much the crux of her character. Also, she is hell-bent on just getting revenge on not only Crystal, but Edwin and Charles. She even creates a human out of one of her crows named Monty as kind of like a distraction, because, you know, there's a lot of things going on with just Edwin's character where I wish they would have showed this. Maybe they're going to save this for season 2. But Edwin's character, he's been dead for over like 100 years, but he's been in hell for like 70 years. He's able to escape. I wanted to see that because in this season, towards the end of this series, or this first season, is him going back to hell. But I want to see how he escaped the first time. And he's also dealing with a lot of internal feelings as far as it goes for Charles, his best friend, and other characters that come into play, like the Cat King. He's fucking hilarious, as he puts this bracelet so he can't leave this town until he can he can count all the fucking cats that are in the town on some Riddler shit. If you've ever played any of the Arkham games, you know what I'm talking about. I had mentioned there are more antagonists or people that are kind of in the way of the Dead Boy detectives that they're trying to avoid, is the Night Nurse. Now, when I saw the Night Nurse in Doom Patrol, she looks absolutely terrifying. You would not want to be anywhere around her. But in this, she is very much more presentable, I guess, or just not as scary looking. But she wants to pretty much do her job, is, you know, make sure any kids that have passed away are getting their afterlives, or are in the right place and not in the wrong place, pretty much like some TVA shit. So even just how each episode just feels completely different with all the different cases and all the different obstacles they have to deal with, like fighting big ass killer mushrooms, or having to deal with the sprites, dealing with like one of my favorite episodes was episode 3, the DeVille house, which is like on some Amityville horror shit where they get stuck in this loop of this guy killing off his whole family. That was really dope. And how they kind of dive into the backstory of Edwin and Charles, like Charles kind of relating with what's going on with episode 3, trying to kind of confront his own demons and deal with his own trauma. And we see how he ended up dead from just his abuse from his father, and not only from his father, like he had to deal with bullies in school. That's what led to his death. Edwin's was so much crazier, where like he had a classmate summon a demon on him to drag him to hell and whatnot. And I just really like how they also tie this in with Sandman, because we do see death and despair, and I really like how despair comes in. That shit was dope. Just them going back to hell was really dope with those last 2 episodes. Seeing what Edwin's hell was. It's this spider creature that has these doll parts on it that would continuously like rip him apart, and he had to deal with that for 70 years. The guy that summoned the demon on him is down there just tearing pages for eternity. He's been doing that for 100 years. That shit's crazy. And seeing Despair watch that whole thing just kind of play out, and just how everything wrapped up and kind of just came to a close with the with Esther and whatnot, because I definitely think that Esther was a really dope villain, and I'm curious to see what other villains are going to kind of pop up. Are the Dead Boys going to end up crossing over with Sandman in season 2? You know what I'm saying? And I'm just so fascinated by just this world building that they have just done throughout this first season, and it has me really excited to see what's going to happen next. And I also like the visual effects. The visual effects are just really stunning, man. Like, they definitely didn't hold back on the budget. But I want to know your thoughts on this. Are you more familiar with the Dead Boy Detectives, or are you just like me, just really new to all of this? How do you guys just feel about the overall universe they're building with the Sandman universe? There's so many dope characters that they introduced. Overall, I think they did a good job of tying all the different storylines and uh, drama and conflict that each individual character had to deal with and face. And now we're getting completely different characters, and they've gone through their different arcs, whether it's, you know, Edwin trying to figure out love or just talk to people more, be more social, kind of lighten up a bit, or it's like with Charles, he's trying to just, you know, be a hero or just be a good person, as he says. And Crystal, you know, really discovering like who she truly is, and when she connects with her ancestors, that shit is fucking dope as hell too. And I really want to see what they're going to do with this Nico situation, because how that whole thing wrapped up at the end, kind of teasing certain things, was really dope. Like I said, I'm really fascinated with what they presented with this first season, but I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. This is just my kind of thoughts on this first season. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.